The train is back on the tracks again for day number 3. So, the first day we gave you the rankings and we previewed Class 6A. We came back on yesterday and we previewed 5A and 4A. So, we're going to keep the pigskin going and we're going to try to get through 3A, 2A, and 1A. Oh, and let me say this. Tomorrow is going to be the scoreboard show because tonight, in a matter of a few hours, as a matter of fact, the foot is going to hit the pigskin for the kickoff, and it's going to be football season all throughout the state of Kansas. I want to first do, as they say in radio talk, do a little bit of housekeeping. I want to thank Brent Maycock because a lot of this information I'm getting is off of the Acacia website. All of my information is coming off of that website. I want to thank him and his staff for all this good content that I'm getting out to you. Uh, Oftentimes, I will use Vipe. They send me my publication every quarter. Today, in the last few days, I've been going with the Acacia website, very in depth, detailed. So I've always been taught to give credit where credit is due. So, Brent and the staff, you guys rock it. You're on top of things. And I'm going to say it like this: I could not do it without you guys. And hopefully, Mr. Maycock, I want to get you on my show. I want to get you on the live stream. I hope we can make that possible. But today, as I say, we're going to look at 3A, 2A, 1A. I may get a chance to make it out to a game tonight. I may not, but I'm definitely looking forward, hopefully next week, to get out to a game. Uh, I'm gonna tell you right now, the one I have circled on my pencil is in the G wall, uh, providing that both teams take care of business tonight in their home openers. Well, I believe East is on the road at Heights. Bishop Carroll, Wichita Northwest is hosting Bishop Carroll, the battle for the West Side, and that game I know will probably be a packed house as well too. Uh, Hopefully the weather won't have any hindrance on the games. So what I want to do though, I want to look at 3A. As we know, last year's state champion, uh, after a 1 year hiatus from playing in the championship game, all they did was go undefeated last year, reasserted their dominance, was Andale. The runner up was Hayden. And this is 3A we're looking at. Things were a little different for Andale coming into the 2024 season. For the first time in 5 years, the Indians didn't enter the season with the target on their backs as the defending state champion. Their reign in Class 3A ended by Cheney in 2023. But that doesn't mean the target wasn't still there with the Indians, not only still as talented as anyone in 3A, but now a little hungrier. The determination to get that state title back showed throughout the season, as aside from a wild 56-48 win over Wellington in week 2, Andale bulldozed his way through opponent after opponent and got back to the championship game for the 5th time in 6 years and 6th time in head coach Dylan Schmidt's 8 years. Plain and simple, that's a dynasty. Prior to the streak ending, they were getting national attention. I think they'd reeled off like 54, 55 straight wins. So, yes, they were getting some national attention. Even the title game was a test of Andale's resolve, as Hayden was more than a formidable foe, playing in the title game for the 2nd straight year after finishing runner-up to Cheney in 2023. The Wildcats scored twice in the 2nd quarter of the title game to take a 19-12 halftime lead, racking up 208 yards in the opening half. But with Hayden getting the ball to start the second half, Andale stiffened. The Indians shut down Hayden, pitching a second half shutout and 2 second half touchdown runs by Landon Hart, keyed a 24-point second half for Andale as the Indians roared back for a 36-19 victory, clinching the program's 5th state title in 6 years. Andale finished undefeated for the 5th time under Schmidt, while Hayden finished with an 11-2 mark, his other loss coming to Wamego. And yes, I talked about Wamego last night. They have a quarterback that will probably be writing some records, who is just a sophomore this year. Last year played as a freshman. Logan Fulton. No, I did not forget that name. So let's look at the contenders. With the Andale train getting back on track last year, it's almost impossible not to deem the Indians the favorite to add to their dynasty with another championship this season. The Indians posted their 5th undefeated championship under Dylan Schmidt and now has gone, you ready for this? 97-4 during his first 8 years leading the program. While there might be some skepticism with just 3 starters back on offense from last year's title team, no team has reloaded quite like the Indians over the last decade, and the trio of offensive starters back are as solid as they come. Senior quarterback Sam Harp threw for 813 yards and 13 touchdowns and ran for 1,057 yards and 35 touchdowns, while back Jack Horsch was the leading receiver and will move into a bigger role in the ground game with the graduation of Landon Hart. Defense has long been a strong suit for Andale, with 6 starters back will be once again, even in replacing All-State top 11 linebacker Cooper Marks. Senior Hunter Grimes was the team's leading tackler last year, and the teams with Horsch for a strong linebacker duo ahead of Harp and fellow returning defensive back Lane Pathamer. The biggest holes each way are up front, where Emery Kraft is the lone returning 2-way lineman. Could the third time be the charm? Hayden is hoping so after 2 straight trips to the 3A championship game have ended in runner-up finishes to Cheney in 2023 and to Andale last year. The Wildcats had a halftime lead in last year's title tilt, but couldn't slow down Andale in the second half and saw its offense shut out in a 35-19 loss. Graduation claim standout do everything performer Jason Schrickle, who was the team's leading receiver and 2nd leading rusher, and also a dangerous returner. Also gone is 4-year starting quarterback Jack Wallmeyer and some other key pieces. But Hayden is still loaded for another run at a title. Cade Mitchell is a Schrickle clone and led the Wildcats in rushing and was second in receiving with more than 1,300 yards and a team-high 26 touchdowns. Connor Hanika takes over at quarterback and got plenty of experience as a sophomore when Walmart went down at the start of the 2023 playoffs. Linebacker Jude Krentz was Hayden's leading tackler and is one of 8 starters back on defense, teaming with Jackson McGivern, Logan Sayans, and Alexander Blassing to give Hayden a solid linebacking core. After capturing the program's first state championship in 2023, Cheney only reached the quarterfinals last year before falling to eventual champion Andale. Nice little rivalry going on right there. The team the Cardinals have displaced as champion in 2023. The Cardinals also finished 9-2, their 7th season of 8 wins or more in the last 8 years. Cheney has a huge hole to fill with the loss of 3-year starting quarterback Josh Burdick, with task falling to senior Reese Toller, who was a starting linebacker a year ago. He'll bring toughness to an offense that returns 5 starters, including 3-year starting lineman Wyatt Starnes. 5 starters also return on defense, including leading tackler Dietrich McDaniel. Transfer Caden Ludwig, who came in from Pratt, has a chance to be an impact player on both sides of the ball. Wellsville has the longest regular season winning streak in Class 3A, having gone undefeated in the regular season each of the past 4 seasons. After 2 straight disappointing second-round playoff exits in 2022 and 23, the Eagles reached the semifinals last year before falling 35-7 to Hayden to end an 11-1 season. The addition of Armand Graves was huge for the Eagle offense last year as he ran for nearly 1,250 yards and 25 touchdowns, earning first-team All-3A honors. He's one of 8 returning starters on offense this year and one of 7 returners on defense. The Eagle line will be strong with 4 returning starters led by Wyatt Brungard. If an 8-2 season can somewhat fly under the radar, that was the case for Wichita Collegiate last year. The Spartans' lone regular season loss came to Andale, and the season ended in the second round of the playoffs against Cheney in a 14-6 loss. Graduation claimed all 3A lineman Tristan Sproul and quarterback Harrison Simon, who led the team in rushing and passing. Another blow was the transfer of leading tackler Jaden Parker to Texas. Sebastian Hines Turner saw him last year against Cheney. Talk about an ultra talented young man. Returns as the leading receiver, but is recovering from Achilles surgery in December. Julian Johnson returns at tailback as a 2-year starter with nearly 1,400 yards and 23 TDs in his career. The defense returns 3 starters up front, but just 1 in the back 7, that being Hines Turner. Clay Center will have somewhat of a new identity with the graduation of Cole Platson, a multi-sport standout for the Tigers who manned the quarterback position the past 3 years. Expect the Tigers to lean more into the ground game, which always has been their strong suit. Senior Isaac Gurton returns after rushing for 552 yards and 8 touchdowns last year and has 3 starting linemen back to run behind. Drew Hoffman takes over at quarterback after starting at linebacker last year. Gurton also was the leading tackler last year with 94 stops from his linebacker spot. He's one of 5 starters back on that side of the ball. The Tigers went 5-5 last year after going 9-2 in 2023 and 8-4 in 2022. Going through three straight losing seasons from 2021 to 23, Columbia got back to its winning ways last year with a 7-3 mark. The Titans returned six starters but lost all 3A first teamer Jay Midget in the secondary after he picked off 8 passes last year. Thief. Leading rusher Jet Tanner is back as is standout sophomore lineman Cash Smith, who was a first-team All-CNC performer as a freshman. Cole Howard also started as a freshman last year in the secondary and will take over at quarterback for the departed Jack Villela. A run at the Class 3A title game seemed in the works after Frontenac posted an undefeated regular season and Leon Miller's returned as head coach of the program. But the Raiders were upset in the second round of the playoffs by Perry Lecompton, prematurely ending the season with a 9-1 mark. Frontenac doesn't have a big senior class with just 6 out, but there are great numbers in the next 3 classes, setting Frontenac up for good things in the future. This year's success will be determined by how Miller fills the voids around 3 returning starters on offense and 4 on defense. Gerard was 6-4 last year and will have to replace standout end Scott Moore, a first team All 3A pick who starred on both sides of the ball and now is at Delaware. The Trojans do return senior back Lamont Love Jr., who has led the team in rushing each of the past 2 seasons, including 901 yards and 11 TDs last year. Starting last season 7-0, Heston finished 8-2, falling in the regular season finale to Andale and then to Scott City in the second round of the playoffs. The latter a tough 9-7 defeat. The victory total was the most since 2017, and the 7-0 start was the best since 2014. The Swanthers are poised to duplicate or surpass that success this season with 7 starters back on offense and 6 on defense. The strength is up front where senior Ethan Corte and junior Gunnar Golden were both first-team All-Central Kansas League selections both ways and are 2 of 4 returning starters. Junior Jarek Humphreys returns at quarterback after throwing for nearly 1,700 yards last year as a sophomore. The skill spots around him will be mostly unproven. Holcomb made his deepest postseason run since capturing the 2017 state championship in 4A Division II, reaching the state semifinals before falling to eventual champion Andale. Along the way, the Longhorns avenged one of his 2 regular season losses with a 10-7 quarterfinal win over Scott City, and the only other loss came to Cheney in the opener in a 9-3 season. Holcomb will return just half of his Johnson & Johnson offensive attack as graduation claim quarterback Keegan Johnson. Younger brother Corbin was a first-team All-3A pick. However, after rushing for 1,172 yards and 14 TDs and leading the team in tackles, the Longhorns also graduated All-3A lineman Drayton Knoll, but they do return 7 starters on both sides of the ball. A state semifinalist in 2023, Houghton slid back to a 5-5 mark last year with 1-point losses in the first 2 games, setting the tone for a somewhat frustrating season that ended with injuries taking their toll by the time postseason hit. Healthy and with numbers back up, Houghton looks to resume its customary place among the top contenders in 3A. Kel Frazier is the leading returning rusher from a year ago, and the Wildcats returned 4 starters on the offensive line as head coach Brooks Barta. I remember that name. He was a very dominant player. I think he went on and started at Kansas State as well, too. Closes in on his 275th victory, sitting just 6 wins from that mark. Rebuilding an offensive line that lost 3 starters will be key as to whether Hugoton can build on last year's 6-3 season. Eagles returned everyone else on both sides of the ball with 8 starters back each way. That includes quarterback Miguel Hernandez, who ran for over 1,100 yards last year. Isaiah Guardado added over 800 yards on the ground in the flexbone offense. Despite its winning record, Hugoton missed the playoffs, stuck in a loaded district that once again will be one of the best in the state. Marysville, yes, Marysville. As I shared the other day, the reason I put some emphasis on Marysville, I used to be a delivery driver for a CVS company, and we delivered medications to long-term care facilities. And one of the towns I stopped through in the middle of the night, always stopped at Casey's, was Marysville. And I was blown away by the school that they had. I'm like, this looks like a nice facility, look like a nice school, look like they have nice facilities. And some of the locals that I talked to there in the middle of the night that would stop at Casey's would always rave about the basketball program, how good their basketball program is, how frustrated they were with the football program. I'm pretty sure last year those frowns turned to smiles because they had a winning program. So let's talk about them. Marysville opened everyone's eyes last year when it opened the season with an upset of Nemaha Central, ending the Thunder's 26-game winning streak. The Bulldogs rode the momentum for a bit before a tough end to the season led to a 6-3 mark, including a hard 12-7 loss to Holcomb in the playoff opener. Marysville will greatly miss quarterback Will Otat, who was the team's leading rusher and passer last year. 6 starters do return each way, including leading tackler Cameron Wetter and leading receiver Brody Lawrence. A slow start to the season, 1-4 through 5 games, 2-5 through 7, didn't stop Perry Lecompton from making some postseason noise. After handling Santa Fe Trail in the opener, the Cause upset undefeated Frontenac in the second round before seeing the run end in the quarterfinals against Hayden. The Cause returned 6 starters on offense, including 3-year starting lineman Trevor Conklin and starting linebacker Garrett Metcalf, though the rest of the offensive production is gone. 6 players that had at least 35 tackles are back on defense. Much to the delight of opposing coaches, this is indeed Parker Schwartz's final year at Prairie View. The standout back has seemingly been around forever, and he's been production since day one. He led the Buffaloes to an 8-3 mark and the state quarterfinals before falling to Wellsville, which handed them 2 of their 3 losses. Schwartz finished the season rushing for a career high. Are you ready for this? 2,305 yards. Let me say that again. 2,305 yards and 26 touchdowns, giving him 4,983 yards and 63 touchdowns in his career. What I want somebody to do is help me look up what is the all-time record in the state of Kansas for most career yards by running back. Not just in the league that they play in, but for the state of Kansas. Those are some eye-popping numbers. Parker Schwartz. Remember that name. I hope he goes on to greater heights after his high school days are over. Moving right along. Pratt boasts one of the state's top recruits in senior end Arlie Morrell, who is equally good on each side of the ball, earning all 3A first team honors at defensive end. He's one of only 3 starters back on offense and just 5 return on defense, with that unit losing all 3A first team defensive back Owen Schmidt. Senior Josh Smith is the lone returning offensive lineman. One of the stingiest defenses in 3A last year belonged to Rock Creek, which allowed just 82 points in 10 games. 82 points in 10 games. Let me see. Simple math means their opponents average just roughly about 8 points a game, barely. 7 starters are back from unit, including the linebacker duo of Nick Allen and Ezra Spiller. Each first team All North Central Kansas League picks. All league lineman Wade Rottenhouse also returns as one of 4 starting offensive linemen back, ahead of returning quarterback Gavin Rosa, who will had almost an entirely new set of weapons around him. The Mustangs finished 8-2, losing 21-14 to Holcomb in the second round of the playoffs. The Great West Activities Conference title went to Scott City last year in what may have been the best year top to bottom in the league. The Beavers' only loss in the regular season came to Ray, Colorado, but a run to the title game ended in the quarterfinals as Holcomb got payback for a 9-0 regular season loss with a 10-7 win. Scott City returned 7 starters on offense, but will greatly miss standout tight end Jackson Rumford and quarterback Camden Vogelmore. Caden Couchman returns at tailback after rushing for nearly 600 yards, and 3 linemen return, led by Emilio Contreras. And that is your look at 3A. Now we take our attention to Class 2A. Defending state champion coming in, Southeast of Saline. Runner-up was Nemaha Central. And we're going to just go ahead and dive right into the contenders. The story on Southeast of Saline for the last half of the past decade has been this: great in the regular season, heartbroken in the postseason. No team in the state in any class holds a longer regular season streak than the Trojans, who put together their 5th straight undefeated regular season last fall and enters this year on a 51-game winning streak in the regular season. But for all that success, Southeast hadn't been able to cap it with a state title, suffering a number of playoff heartbreaks. But last year, that changed. The Trojans were the playoff heartbreakers, beating Beloit in the semifinals on the final play of the game, and then capping a 13-0 season with a touchdown with 11 seconds left in the title game to end Nemaha Central's 2-year reign. While the monkey is off the back, the target is on it. Southeast returns nearly its entire state championship team from a year ago, losing only 2 offensive starters and 5 on defense. Most notably, all 2A receiver Tucker Thaxton, who caught the game-winning TD in the title game. Gannon Jacobson threw the pass and returns at quarterback after throwing for 2,146 yards and 33 TDs and running for another 806 yards and 10 scores in his first year as starting QB. First year as starting QB. Let's back up. Remember that name, Gannon Jacobson. 21, 46, and 33. Let me say that name again. Gannon Jacobson threw the pass and returns at quarterback after throwing for 2,146 yards and 33 TDs and running for another 806 yards and 10 scores in his first year as starting QB. He's complemented in the backfield by senior Grady Gebhardt, as if that wasn't enough, who ran for 1,439 yards and 15 TDs and is also a standout at linebacker. Can you say hard to game plan? You have a 2,100 plus quarterback throwing for 2,100 plus yards and 33 TDs, runs for another 806 yards. Can you say dual threat? And then you turn around and hand it off to a running back that runs for 1,400 plus yards. Oh, and an additional 15 TDs on the ground. And he can smack you around from the linebacker position. Something tells me this team is going to be dangerous and hard to game plan for. Southeast boasts arguably the top small school lineman in Brody Chambers, who was an all 2A pick as well. Southeast has all the pieces to go back to back this season, even with 2A once again deep with contenders. In a sense, the 2024 season was a rebuilding year for Nemaha Central after suffering heavy graduation losses from its back-to-back state championship teams in 2022 and 23. Most notably, the Thunder had to rebuild the offensive line a year ago and had the luxury of only 4 seniors, one of whom was lost for the season right away. Nemaha saw a string of 26 straight wins and 2 straight titles come to an end, but still fashioned an 11-2 mark and finished as state runner-up, losing in the final seconds of the championship game to Southeast Upsaline. The Thunder will be loaded this year despite having to replace all 2A linebacker Abram Kime, who was the leading tackler. But when you still have Carter Hayjack, a state title is well within reach. Hayjack followed up a huge sophomore season with an even bigger junior campaign, rushing for, these are just some eye-popping numbers, 2,382 yards and 40 touchdowns, and throwing for 1,143 yards and 13 scores. He's one of 9 starters back both ways and has the likes of Caleb Strathman back from a deep set of skilled players as well as 3 offensive linemen. Jack Mackey had a big season at defensive end last year as one of the top returning defenders. It was a historic season for Osage City a year ago as the Indians set a program record with 10 wins and navigated arguably the toughest 2A district, ending a long losing streak to former league rival Silver Lake. The Indians reached the state quarterfinals for the second straight year and nearly got to the semifinals, leading Nemaha Central late in their quarterfinal showdown. But Nemaha drove the length of the field for the game winner, ending Osage City's season at 10-1. The Indians lost a 10-member senior class that never lost a Flint Hills League game and set a school record with 35 wins in their career. But as big as those losses are, the returning senior class is loaded with the playmakers that have keyed the 2 straight quarterfinal runs. Kason Parsons has been brilliant at quarterback and last year threw for 1,821 yards and 21 touchdowns and ran for 1,010 yards and 19 TDs on his way to all 2A honors. Receiver Quentin Stark also was all 2A, having 723 yards and 13 TDs, and Dylan Thiel made all 2A as a returner, but accounted for over 1,000 yards rushing and receiving yards and 15 TDs on offense as well. 8 starters back on offense and 7 return on defense, with the biggest holes coming on the line. It took somewhat of a miracle finish to deny Beloit its second 2A state championship game appearance in 4 years. After falling 32-6 to Southeast Saline in the regular season, Beloit had the undefeated Trojans on the rope in a semifinal rematch, leading 30-28 with less than a minute to play, only to see Southeast score on the last play of the game for a 34-30 victory. That ended a 9-3 season for Beloit. The only other loss coming to then number 1 Norton. Beloit took some big hits to the offensive line with graduation claiming 4 starters, including all 2A first-team pick Brody Boudreaux, as well as Eli Johnson, who was first-team all 2A on the defensive line. Eli's younger brother, sophomore Griffin, is the lone returner from Division One. Is the lone returning, though Division One tight end. Prospect Brody Litton is essentially another lineman in the Trojans' run-heavy scheme. The running game is still in good hands with the return of all 2A back Joel Rexroth, who ran for just shy of 1,900 yards and 29 touchdowns. Beloit will break in a new quarterback and some backs around Rexroth, but 6 starters are back on the offense and 4 return on defense. A talented sophomore class will play big roles this season. An 0-3 start due to some early injuries slowed Hoisington a bit, but the Cardinals found their stride late in the season, winning 5 straight to reach 2A quarterfinals before falling to eventual champion Southeast of Saline. The Cardinals were state runner-up in 2023, but most of the top contributors on that team are now gone. Offensive lineman Leighton Hoffman is one of the few left as a 3-year starter. Mason Martin will move from being the leading receiver a year ago to take over at quarterback, while Taylor Morales is the leading returning rusher. Hoisington got a huge addition with the transfer of Brody Fanestell from Russell, with Fanestell drawing major Division I interest on the recruiting trail as just a junior. Caney Valley was 6-3 a year ago and returns tailback Traxton Garden, who ran for 1,229 yards and 17 touchdowns as a sophomore last year. The Bullpups must replace all 2A in Ben Matthews and 3 first-team all Tri-Valley League linemen. Coming off the best season in program history, Council Grove, another town I used to drive through, came within 1 win of making its first ever appearance in a state championship game. As it was, the Braves made the semifinals for the first time, falling to Nemaha Central 21-6 to finish the season 8-4. Butch Hayes has moved from head coach to an assistant spot, with former assistant Brave standout Deron Reddick taking over as head coach. He'll have a team that returns 5 starters each way, but must replace some key figures that were big parts of the Braves' recent rise, namely all 2A lineman Holden Ziegler and linebacker Ace Mohan. Defensive back Blasey French had a big season with 6 interceptions, and Reed Buttery and Bradley Dumbas are back after having more than 65 tackles and double-digit tackles for loss last year. Luke Stewart leads the offensive returners after throwing for 1,678 and 17 touchdowns last year. It was a tale of 2 seasons for Ellsworth. A year ago, as the Bearcats started the season 5-0 before dropping their final 4 games. Senior back Landon Johnson carried the load, rushing for 1,391 yards and 16 touchdowns, but has graduated. Tucker Goss is the top returning producer, but tight end Cooper McGowan is a coveted recruit at his tight end spot and was also the leading tackler, just ahead of fellow returning linebacker Micah Galvin. A 1-win team in Jonah McKee's first year as head coach, Eureka made a monstrous leap last year, going 6-3. Another step forward could be in order with 8 starters back on defense and 6 returning on offense. Quarterback Peyton Hare had 1673 yards of total offense and 25 total touchdowns, and has a versatile weapon in first-team All Tri-Valley League back receiver T.J. Mills. 3 starting linemen also returned for the Tornadoes. After starting the season 1-2, Garden Plain ripped off 7 straight wins to reach the 2A quarterfinals before falling 19-0 to Beloit to finish 8-3. The Owls will miss all 2A linemen Keaton Castleman and all 2A kicker Seth Dugan, but returned 5 starters on offense, including leading rusher Emmerich Hayes, who ran for 1,157 yards and 18 touchdowns. He also was a leading tackler from his linebacker spot and is one of 8 players who started at some point on that side of the ball. Haven was 8-2 last year, but graduation, a trio of players in Van Loop, Aiden Hoops, and Nash Ray, who accounted for 41 of the team's 51 touchdowns last fall. Almost everyone from the offense does return, and the quarterback spot will go from Ray to another, with Brogan Ray, from one Ray to another Ray, taking over for his older brother. Leading tackler Grant Patry leads 6 returning starters on defense. Replacing the winningest senior class in program history will be a big challenge for Humboldt, which went 10-1 last year and won 33 games during their 4 years. Among the losses were standout quarterback Blake Ellis, who totaled over 2,500 yards and 44 touchdowns, and 4-year starters Kyler Isbell, and Logan Page, among others. The Cubs' lone loss came to Council Grove in the state quarterfinals after they won their first 10 contests by double digits. Mason Sterling returns after amassing nearly 1,300 rushing yards and receiving yards, and he'll slide in at quarterback to replace Ellis. All Tri-Valley League linemen Mark McCullough and Hudson Reeves are also back among the starters on offense and 5 on defense. Norton spent part of last season ranked number 1 in 2A as it began the season 6-0, but an upset loss to Phillipsburg ended that run, and the Blue Jays saw their bid to make a deep playoff run end with a 34-7 second-round playoff loss to eventual champion Southeast of Saline. Lucas Melvin has stepped aside as head coach, turning the program over to former Norton standout Jeremy Hawks. He inherits a team that returns only 3 starters on defense, 5 on offense, and must replace the likes of all 2A punter Eli Jones, who also was one of the top quarterback and linebackers in 2A last year as a 3-year starter. Only 1 lineman is back on offense and none return on defense, leaving work to do up front. Tyler Backman is the leading returning offensive player, rushing for 550 yards and 11 TDs last year. Phillipsburg is coming off a 6-4 season that included big wins over Norton, Smith Center, and Plainville. The Panthers returned 6 starters on offense, including state hurdle champion Tanner Hornick, who will take over as the primary back with the graduation of unanimous All-Mid-Continent League back Seth Keaton. The line only returns 2 starters and lost all 2A pick Caden Seams. Royal Valley was 5-4 last year, its first winning season since 2015, and broke 8 school records, including rushing yards in the season. Of course, a ton of those yards went out the door when all 2A back Jackson Stevens graduated last May. Nearly everyone else is back, though, and senior Nolan Bosch and junior fullback Manny Oliveira will take on bigger loads, as will senior quarterback Griffin Compton. 3 starting linemen also return, and a handful of beefy newcomers are ready to step in the holes to keep the ground game going. After graduating 23 seniors from his 2023 semifinal squad and also transitioning to a new head coach in Caleb Moeller last year, Sabetha felt pretty good about his 6-4 mark. Two of those losses came to rival Nemaha Central. The Blue Jays have considerably more experience this year with 9 starters back on defense and 7 on offense. Junior lineman Holden Edelman was a first-team All-Big East League pick last year as a sophomore. Winning close games was a key last season for Silver Lake, which opened the season with a thrilling comfort behind overtime win over arch rival Rossville and won 2 other games by a touchdown or less in the first 4 weeks on its way to a 7-3 season. The Eagles have a lot of holes to fill on offense, namely replacing quarterback Dyson Schooler and a handful of receivers and linemen. But Dane Johnson is a legitimate playmaker at his receiver spot and will ease the transition from whoever wins the QB job. He's also one of 7 returning starters on defense, which will be the strength of the team early on. The Class 1A state champion in 2022, St. Mary's returned to 2A last year with the new coach in CJ Marple. The Bears hit the ground running with a 3-0 start before dropping 3 straight games, 2 by 6 points or less. The Bears finished 6-4 overall, losing a tough 14-0 decision to Osage City in the playoffs. 7 stars are back for the Bears, who must replace all 2A linebacker Howie Rezak. But 13 seniors do return, led by back Corleon Holtz, who ran for nearly 800 yards last year on his way to first-team All-Big East League honors. And there's your look at 2A, which looks to be a very stout class. In other words, there will be no games off. You're going to have to bring it. You have to bring your A game. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do more on this preview, even though I know the season starts roughly, let me see, it is 5:25. The season starts roughly in pretty much an hour and a half in most locations. I'm pretty sure there were some games that started last night. But I'm pretty sure those of you who are following me either on the Riverside platform, if you can download it, or on my YouTube channel or on my Twitch channel, I'm pretty sure you won't mind me coming back tomorrow because it's going to be extra loaded tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and preview 1A tomorrow on my scoreboard show and give you the scores and try to come up with some top performers and also sprinkle in some players to watch. I feel committed to doing that for you, my viewing audience and my listening audience, because after this, I will do my edits and this show will also be podcasted. But I do want to say thank you to those of you who have been watching or listening to the podcast. Follow me on X, as they call it now. I still say Twitter sometimes. I want to say thank you. Once again, I sent a message out to Brent Maycock, thanking him for the hard work he did. Him, the staff, because all this is made possible by them. All this information I'm getting is off of the Acacia website. So those of you who know him personally, just say, hey, we heard you do a marvelous job getting all this information out. I'm saying thank you and tell him thanks as well, too. But until the next time, get out and enjoy a game of your liking. Get out and support these young men. Get out and support these student athletes. And the emphasis is on students. I've had some great student athletes guests on my show. And I always ask them this: what is your grade point average? And what is the importance of an education? And they all get it right. So we as spectators, parents, overseers, whatever we may be to these young people, or what influence we may have on them, not only encourage them on the field, but keep them encouraged in the classroom. Because at some point, the ball is going to stop being thrown. If they play basketball, at some point, the ball is going to stop bouncing. If they play baseball, eventually they'll come up to their final swing. The value of education is important. So always keep them encouraged, not just on the field, but in the classroom. Until the next time, the A train, pull them back into the station. I'm out.